Ryan, I want to welcome you to Rise Above.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Of course. So you came all the way from the state of Washington.
From the state of Washington. I would say what small town I came from, but nobody will recognize it. But it's a couple hours out of Spokane, 5 hours from Seattle. And that's my original hometown, Seattle area. So,
nice, man.
yeah.
What was it like growing up out there?
Seattle, it was interesting. You know, like my childhood, my parents divorced when I was 7. And so I moved around a lot in the Seattle area. And we moved, I lived there till I was about 8 or 9 and bounced around schools pretty much from kindergarten on to that. And then my mother and I had moved to Idaho for a few years, but moved back for middle school to live with her boyfriend at the time. And, you know, I would say my childhood was a little complicated just because of all the moving around.
Yeah.
New schools every single year. And, you know, it was not my mother's fault, but like, you know, just the moving around, I think affected me a little bit socially growing up, you know, just not being able to like make new friends every single year got kind of exhausting.
Yeah.
And by the time I was 12, my dad, you know, kind of convinced me it would be a good idea to move in with him. You know, he had a pretty stable household going, and it wasn't really stable at my mother's just because I spent a lot of time in the basement, not really socialized, like not really spending time with the family. They kind of felt like they had their own family upstairs, you know?
Yeah.
So I spent a lot of my childhood pretty depressed and anxious, you know, panic attacks all the time. I was calling, you know, going into the nurse's office at school on a regular basis, you know, since I can remember. All those years, you know, I would just say, "Oh yeah, my stomach hurts," just so I could avoid being around people, and that got exhausting, you know, because I was like, "Is it going to be like this the rest of my life? Like, am I going to always be suffering like this?" You know, I always imagined like my perfect situation would be in just a empty room covered with walls and nobody can see me, and I just have a TV and some video games, and that would be my perfect life at the time.
Yeah.
Because I was just so frightened of real world, and so when my dad convinced me that to move in with him when I was about 12. I think it was right before 8th grade started. You know, I moved into his house and basically wasn't used to structure. My mother, you know, kind of let me just do my own thing. If I wanted to stay at friends' houses, the few friends that I had, I would stay at their houses all the time, and I would have all the freedom in the world. And then I moved into my dad's, and I was excited about it because I only knew having fun with him, you know, because I'd see him on every other week or something like that. And he and I would always do fun stuff. So I was like, oh, this will be great, you know. And of course, me not knowing how to respond to actual structure and rules and like a curfew and all these things, I obviously just started to rebel and started to hang out with a lot of the wrong kids and stuff like that. And it kind of, I think, surprised him a little because he's like, oh, I just knew my son to be just really polite and listen to everything I'd say, and now he's, you know, kind of running wild, you know, getting caught shoplifting and stuff like that. So to answer your question, growing up in Seattle as a kid was pretty complicated because my dad and I had some rough bouts throughout high school. You know, he's a traveling salesman, gone a lot. I was butting heads with my stepmother, which was his wife. She ended up being diagnosed with cancer, which I think was tough on her, but also tough on their relationship. So he ended, you know, wasn't coming home as often, and I think traveling more for work. And when he would come home, you know, we would bicker, we would butt heads, you know. Sometimes, you know, it got a little physical, you know, and it was just it was rough. It was rough. So, but for the most part, he and I got along, and we have a great relationship right now. It's been a rocky relationship throughout our lives, but we're great right now. A lot of it has to do with my sobriety, and I think he's worked on himself too. But as far as like high school goes, I got good grades. I didn't drink, only drank 3 times in high school, and all 3 times something bad happened. So I was like, there's no point in me keeping drinking. I'll just be the DD all the time.
Right.
And so the 3 times I drank, you know, one time I had a 40-ounce bottle break through my teeth. Somebody hit it while I was drinking it. It was my first buzz ever. So somebody elbowed it and went into my mouth all bloody. So that was my first instance. The second time I had alcohol poisoning, and the third time I got jumped. So it was kind of like, okay,
Nice.
no point to drink.
You
But
went 3 for 3.
yeah, but I was, like, to talk about my relationship with my dad, it's just we got along for the most part, but had our issues. I got good grades. I played sports. I was decent at sports.
What sports did you play?
Soccer and baseball for the most part. Yeah.
Nice. Did you go on to play in college, or was it just a high school thing?
No, it was just a high school thing. I would
Yeah.
say soccer was the sport that I was really good at.
Yeah.
And I kind of wish I was better at baseball because I think I liked baseball more, but
Yeah.
soccer just naturally came to me, like, came easy without even practicing. And
Yeah.
I was a really good player. I got league MVP my junior year, which was cool. And we won a lot of games. And it was a good escape for me, I think, from I played on 2 teams at a time usually. And it was kind of a good way for me just to be out of the house because there was so much chaos at home usually.
Mhm.
And I was still kind of uncomfortable in my own skin. I mean, I had friends, people liked me, but nobody really knew what kind of things I was fighting in my head all the time. I was
Mm.
really good at, like, putting on that really beautiful mask every day, and just acting like I was okay. But in reality, I was, pretty depressed all the time.
Yeah.
And
It's interesting. The people around us, oh, Ryan's doing great. Look at him. He's league MVP. He's doing decent in school. He's got a bright future ahead of him. And
Yeah.
then little do they know what's really going on,
yeah, that's the scary part.
behind the scenes.
It just shows that we're so good at hiding what we're going through all the time. Like, we're so good at just masking it with, pretending you're happy, disguising it with trying to help other people, just
course.
deflecting from the situation.
And then with social media added on now, I mean, social media wasn't a thing when I was in high school. So,
Yeah.
but people show the best of their life
Yeah.
on social media.
Yep.
So that's like another layer of masking, or even a better way, more manipulative way to mask for all the public to see.
Yeah.
So you graduate high school.
Yep.
What do you do after high school?
It's like something turned me loose. It was like I was off to the races because I was excited to go to a school 5 hours away from where I lived. I was like, all right, this is my opportunity just to get out of the home life that was frustrating me. It was a way for me to, like, start fresh. And, the day one when I went off to college at Washington State University, day one, I got there a week before school started, and I went out and drank and socialized, was meeting girls, getting phone numbers that first night. I was like, holy crap, I like feeling like this, But I wanted to be a sports writer when I went to school, sports analyst, sports writer. I thought I was pretty good with writing. I've been writing since I was a kid and took the AP classes and all that. And I'm a huge sports fan, sports nerd, and memorize everything. And I just thought, this is my passion. I'd like to do it, but it's kind of like a niche industry. You really have to be something specific to get there, like Stephen A. Smith or, all those people. So it's just like, it's hard. It was hard for me to really focus on that because I joined a fraternity and started really kicking up drinking. I lived in a dorm for the first few months and got great grades because I was only drinking on weekends. But my roommate at the time, he was kind of too reclusive, and he just kind of didn't want to go out with me very often or go out and socialize. It was just, I felt bored. So, and I didn't feel like I was making enough friends. I was going to the gym all the time, but nothing was really clicking, and I wasn't, like, having the best time. I wasn't living college life.
Mm-hmm.
So, buddy, a guy that I met in class who was in a fraternity, invited me over to his house to work on a project, and I started, like, looking at the atmosphere. I see girls walking around. I was at that time where I was chasing girls, and just, like, I was like, wow, this is really cool. People are just casually drinking in here. Like, I can't do this in these dorms that I'm at. So I just was, like, sold on it. And
Yeah, of course.
a week later, I moved in there.
A week later, you started pledging for the fraternity?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Impulse decision.
Okay. So you pledge for the fraternity, you get in,
Yeah.
you start living in that house. What happens next? Does your drinking start ramping up significantly? Hey guys, quick update. Every Monday night, I host the Rise Above Recovery meeting. It's an open meeting for any addiction, alcohol, drugs, gambling, food, whatever you're struggling with, you're welcome here. To get the meeting link and weekly updates, just email me at kevin@riseabovepod.com and I'll add you to the list. Also, if this podcast has helped you, please like, subscribe, or leave a rating. It helps us continue to spread the message of hope. Lastly, if you'd like to go even deeper with Rise Above, check out our Patreon. Supporters get access to live interviews and can chat with guests after the interview. Thank you.
Yes. The first night I even signed that pledge bid card, they're like, all right, this guy and this guy are waiting for you downstairs or at the live out next door. And I'm like, what do you mean? They're like, oh, they're going to get you effed up. You know, they're going to get you drunk. And I'm like, okay, well, I guess I'll do that. I had an essay to write. It's kind of symbolic of kind of where my priorities went, you know, because it's like I have a paper to write, but they want me to drink with them. And they're like in their mid-20s. I'm like, I feel pretty cool. So I'm like, yeah, I'll go drink, you know. And I ended up getting completely blacked out with them that night, taking these shots that had 151 in them, you know, 151 rum. And I just remember the next day waking up just feeling like still drunk, and I still went to class and still got my homework done. So like it was
Jesus.
So I was able to like function for a little while with my drinking. I didn't think I was anything near an alcoholic because I was in college. I was just partying when I had a chance to party.
Of course, you're 18, 19 years old. It's
so it's like what everybody was doing. Yeah, it's what everybody's doing. I mean, I know there was some people that were more focused than others and people that were more responsible, but I was too responsible, I thought, even though, you know, I'd gotten into a little trouble growing up, but I thought it was time for me to actually like just live a little, you know?
Yeah.
So in the fraternity, it was just, you know, zero privacy. You live on a sleeping porch with 30 other guys in one big giant room and bunk beds. You know, people are coming in to sleep at different hours, people snoring, people having sex, you know, just like it was no privacy, but it was the lifestyle that was okay with me at the time. You know, if I go to bed drunk every night, like I'm not gonna really care what anybody else is doing. And I'm usually a pretty isolated person. I'm pretty, you know, introverted in a lot of ways, and I like my solitude and my independence. So doing this was a huge like risk for me, you know, like it was something to break out of my comfort zone, and it really did break me out of my comfort zone. But I didn't realize till the more college progressed that I was drinking almost every day, and I was always looking for an excuse to drink. And it got to the point where I was intentionally taking less classes, and there was a couple classes in my communications program that I just couldn't pass. I failed one of them 6 times, which was typing as fast as you can, a perfect newsletter basically that with no errors, and I just kept failing it. So I gave up, and I already had some psych credits, so I switched my major over to psychology. And it was a lot easier for me. And I was always interested in child psych just based on my childhood and how complicated it was. So, yeah, I just caught myself. The longer college progressed, I ended up dropping out of the fraternity. I got into a little trouble with the fraternity due to drinking and had an issue with the president. So,
isn't it funny that, you know, being in a fraternity, it's drinking and partying, right? The camaraderie, of course, but like to get kicked out for drinking, is like, that's what we do, man.
I was kind of shameless, you know, like I made a pass at one of the president's girlfriends, which was inappropriate. You know, she had made a pass at me, and I you know, responded to it and went about it the wrong way, and that caused some friction. And then I had gotten pissed off after that, and had a few friends that weren't in the fraternity come up with me, and they were going to have a party that I wasn't invited to. And we went up, and we took, you know, went in and took all their booze and walked out and got caught doing that. So that was crap that I would never do, but I was in such a petty, drunken mind state that I just didn't care at the time. And I got caught both times. So let's just say the fraternity didn't like me after that. I still kept in touch with a few of the guys that I was close with, but I definitely thought that even living out of the fraternity, moving into my own apartment was going to be more helpful anyways, just to finally have a little less of that party atmosphere all the time. So
yeah,
it's kind of like looking at it as a
win-win,
bittersweet win-win kind of thing.
Yeah. Or a lose-win, rather.
It still sucks being like, you know, blackballed from places, you know, because you're like, oh, they don't want me. That
shameful.
sucks. Yeah, exactly. It makes me really because I thought of myself as a nice person, but some of the decisions and the way I was treating people sometimes was pretty crappy. So,
but also too, and you've, I'm sure, have done the work on it and don't need to hear it from me, but that's what college kids do.
yeah.
Hook up with each other's girlfriends and
Yep. That's what I'm saying.
I mean, people do shit, like whatever, you're a kid. Okay, so you move off campus. Well, the fraternity was probably off campus as well, but you move into your own place, your own apartment.
Yeah.
How does that go?
That goes well. I actually was buddies with the guy that I had helped recruit to join the fraternity, and he and I were talking about the time I was moving out of the fraternity. He was saying, you know what, I'm trying to graduate this year. Like, I want a roommate. And he was actually a pretty responsible guy. I could tell. I was like, okay, this would work as a roommate. We were clicking. We hung out an entire summer just going to the gym and sipping beers together. And I was like, yeah, let's live together. So we move into an apartment way further off campus, and I think it was like owned by student housing or whatever, and there was no parties around it really. I mean, I'm sure some people in the complex threw parties, but it was definitely a better time to focus. But as soon as I move in, and I think it was junior year started, that's when I basically started just using every excuse to drink too. I found some guys from the fraternity that I would just hit up every day, bring them back to my house, and we would just get effed up there all the time, you know? And is it okay to swear on this?
Yeah, man.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we would just get fucked up at my house. We would drink during the day. We would still go to the gym, maybe go to some of our classes, and then we would just come back and drink again and like play beer pong during the day at night. And so even moving out to myself, not being in the fraternity, I still found reasons and excuses to continue drinking.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny. We can move different places. We can change jobs. We can change careers, whatever it is. But the alcoholic always still follows.
Yeah.
I always said to myself, well, if I just got my own apartment, I would stop the drugs and the drinking. If I just moved to New York City, I would stop the drinking and the drugging. Yeah. And it always followed me everywhere I went until I worked on myself. So
yeah, mindset, right? It's just like have to change everything.
So do you graduate college on time?
No, 5.5 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So you graduate, and what do you end up doing from there?
I move out back to Seattle. So yeah, because Pullman was about 5.5 hours from Seattle. So back to Seattle, my hometown, where I figured, it'd be the easiest place to find jobs and all that. And end up, I'm not saying my parents weren't going to allow me to move in, but I didn't feel like I had the option to move back in with them until I got my, got my footing, kind of got my career going and all that. Kind of like a lot of people do. They move back in with their parents and wait, which I've heard of before, but I was like, got my own apartment. My grandmother, who lived in Vermont, she spoiled the heck out of me since I was a kid. And she was basically sending me money to get my own apartment and basically live for free until I found a job. And that basically caused me to like delay looking for a job for a while. Of course. And so for the first, I would say 6 months or so, I continued just partying, drinking in that apartment, making friends in the area, making tons of friends in the apartment complex. We kind of just had this little group going. And, I didn't have to work for all my money at the time. So I was doing some odd jobs here and there, some like writing gigs and stuff like that, just to make a few bucks, some modeling gigs here and there, because at the time I was trying to kind of do some modeling. I was, 22 in good shape, and just thought, okay, well, I could try this, but nothing was really bringing money in because I was, hungover probably 90% of the time. And the friends that I was making probably weren't real friends because I don't even remember who they were to this day. And they were just acquaintances. But it took me a while to find my first job. I started working at AT&T, which was really cool, and worked there for a really long time. That was one of my main jobs, and worked for State Farm for a little while. But if we're going as far as the timeline goes, I started a job just in the tech industry, and then eventually met a guy who I started this online consignment business, and he and I kind of duo together. What do you call it? Collaborated together and started, because I collected sports memorabilia and resold them online, and he was buying stuff from me, and then he had this huge collection.
It's a big business.
Yeah, it's a big business. So he and I kind of collaborated and started our own little business. It was called Belltown Trading at the time.
Nice.
And we basically wouldn't use it just for sports stuff or anything like that. We would start using it for, things like, what's it called when they, I'm having a mind blank, business liquidation.
Yep.
Like, especially tech companies, they would, liquidate all their equipment when they would upgrade their software and their hard drives and their computers and all that. We would be the ones that would take all their old stuff and sell it for them, and we would take a percentage.
Got it.
And that was my line of work for probably a majority of my 30s career.
Yeah.
And so during that time, since I did technically work for myself, I was productive. When I worked really hard, but I definitely still drank, still did cocaine all the time. I was at my own desk all the time. Nobody can watch me do a line next to my desk.
But you own the company though, too, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So they could watch you do a line if they wanted, but they couldn't say shit.
But if you're scared of judgment.
I get it.
But yeah.
So you're drinking, you're doing coke pretty regularly.
Yeah.
Actually, just to backtrack for 1 second, what's the demand like in a business like that where companies are looking to liquidate all of their stuff and you're selling it for them? Is there a lot of demand?
There's a huge demand in the right area, and Seattle's the right area. It's kind of like, Silicon Valley would be a great area to do it. And, And Seattle just happens to have tons of tech companies, everything from, Microsoft, T-Mobile to, everything. Amazon, it's like there's just so many opportunities. So there's so many startups were a big go-to, once they start getting bigger, they start upgrading their stuff, and they were always huge. So I would always be reaching out to them constantly saying, hey, you're going to have to get rid of your, this and that. And, feel free to come to us. And eventually they would be reluctant or hesitant, because they don't want to give up their stuff, but they also don't want to go through the trouble of selling it themselves.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, and they are much bigger things to do. So they would have us do it, and we just do all that busy work. We would package it, ship it.
Yeah.
Once we got checks in from people buying, we would just put it into our account and then give that agreed percentage to the company. And they ended up finding, well, we didn't have to do a damn thing. They came and picked everything up and did all the work and just gave us a check. That's pretty nice. So the word of mouth got around, and other people, other companies just started coming to us, and it even turned into bigger things like companies that weren't even related to tech. Sometimes we would work with just private homeowners and help with their home estate sales and stuff like that. Depending. My buddy who I worked with was really big on art, so he would focus on the art realm. I focused on sometimes shoe collections, to like StockX and stuff like that, like expensive shoes. That was my side, sports and stuff. So we had a couple things where we'd separate, like, this is your thing, you're more passionate about this, and then
that's cool.
Yeah, and we worked really well together. I'd say he was more of the I'd say the more manager figure, since he had been doing it longer than me and he was older.
Of course.
So I would kind of, I would say, look up to him for a lot of things. And I wouldn't say I was underlean or anything, but I definitely, I would say he had more control of the company towards the end, especially. So, but I enjoyed it. I had a lot of freedom, but I didn't realize until I got one of my first like real full-time job with full benefits later on. I had my own retirement and my IRA and all that stuff while I worked for myself, but like I didn't get like a full like structured job until I was about 31. And that's when I moved back to Idaho. But back in, to backtrack, where I was in Seattle working, doing Belltown Trading and all that, that's where I would say I realized I was a full-blown alcoholic for sure.
Right.
Just because everywhere I moved, I moved like around to a different apartment every year in a different area in Seattle, just because I had trouble settling and sitting still. That might stem from my childhood where I moved around a lot.
Of course.
And that's how I was with relationships, different girlfriends all the time. And just because I just couldn't like settle down with anything.
Let me ask you a question. So
Yeah.
you just mentioned with women in relationships, what would go through your head once you're dating a girl for a little while? Like in order for you to maybe break up with her and go jump to someone else, what was, I'm just curious.
What would go through my head was, I'm going to eventually make this end badly, and I'm going to screw up somehow, whether it be me not being faithful, which wasn't always a problem. It was a problem in college, I think, and like some other relationships. Um, but it was just like, how am I going to screw this person over and it's going to end abruptly? And that would go through my head. I'm like, and I would also just be like, well, I don't want to give a lifelong commitment to anybody. So what's the point of dedicating and committing myself to this relationship if I don't see it going on forever? So obviously, I think I thought I had the right to be like, okay, let's end this. But the thing is, I was kind of cowardly in that sense at the time, because I wasn't good at just straight up ending it. I would almost kind of I would almost change myself into kind of cold and not present, to the point where they were like, I don't even want to be with this guy anymore. And I would just kind of take the fall,
Yeah,
and
self-sabotage almost.
Self-sabotage, sort of, because I didn't have the courage to just be like, hey, I don't see this really going on forever, so I don't think this is going to work. And I think it had a lot to do with my inability to want to settle, my desire to, to have, other women in my life, other friends in my life, not feel locked down and feel like I have to be a certain way just to appease the relationship. So it just made me want to kind of run freely. And I think sometimes I become kind of an asshole because of it. And
dude, I relate to that so much. The self-sabotage. I did that for a while. Before I got married, I was like, I was so scared of that I had something wrong with me and they were going to find it out and then they weren't going to accept me for who I was. Not saying that's what you experienced, but then I would self-sabotage from there just to get out of it so that, they never found out whatever I had in my head that made me such a piece of shit.
That's exactly it.
And they would go running for the hills or something like that. I just felt like I would never be accepted by anyone.
And how much of that do we think is like, is it low self-esteem at the time, or like just negative self-talk to the point where we just don't want to muster up the courage to communicate, so we self-sabotage? Like, how much of that is?
Well, that's it. It's the low self-esteem. I had very low self-esteem. No one knew it around me. I was very good at masking it. But I had low self-esteem for so long that I started to believe the lies I was telling myself. And then, like, spoiler alert, you're sober, obviously, while you're on the podcast. But, so you've done the work and we've done the work. And we learn that we aren't those things, and those shameful beliefs that we have in our head about ourselves and like some of the things that we did, we're not that bad. And that's where the self-esteem building really starts. That's the foundation.
Exactly.
Through just helping others and doing esteemable acts so that you could look yourself in the mirror at the end of the day. So you are, let's go to 31. You start this full-time job, like this real corporate job.
I had just a little bit prior to that, just to show why I ended up at that full-time job. I had gotten married to a bartender, of course, and we had a very I would say toxic relationship. And so we went through kind of a rough divorce, and I decided to move back to Idaho.
At 31.
At 31, yeah.
Well, how old were you when you got married?
27.
Okay, so you meet this bartender. You guys are together for a while. You get engaged. You get married at 27.
Yeah.
Are you both 27?
No, she was a little younger. She was about 23, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you guys get married.
Yep.
That's
when my drinking started to kill me when I got in that relationship.
Yeah. Okay.
It wasn't her fault, but dating a bartender makes things very complicated as far as drinking goes, because I would go to her bar all the time, to visit her, have my usual nightcaps, and go home and go to sleep, wake up, work, go to the gym, go back to the bar for a couple hours. Once I started dating her and going close, I would stay at the bar, not just from 5 to 7 or something. I'd stay until close, and I would help her close the bar. And then after that, bartender schedules are a little different. I would go to her house after, where she would be partying with her roommates, and they're in their like early 20s and stuff, and here I was. I already had my career going and all that, but I was drinking not just for a couple hours a day. I was drinking from like 5 o'clock all the way on until about 3 a.m. sometimes. So I was waking up in the morning after a few months of being with her. I was waking up in the morning at her house, like shivering, shaking, like shaking like crazy, couldn't even function. I would be going into her kitchen, finding the half gallon, and I'd be pouring shots for myself and just pounding back up till about 8 to 10 shots just to get the shakes away. And then I would go lay back down in her bed for a little while and then get up and start working for the rest of the day. And I started doing that for a while, and I started to until I was like hospitalized for, drinking too much. I had tried to go to a bar at like 8 a.m. after taking about 10 or 12 shots at her house. And drove straight to a bar because I was like, I feel good. I want to go socialize. Who's going to be at a bar at 8 a.m.? And this was a bar next to the place where I got most of my tattoos too. So I really liked it there. And I didn't realize that I had been on like a 3-month bender nonstop, and I didn't really look in the mirror. But my friend who was at the bar, or who's working at the bar at the time, his wife was working at the bar. She just looked at me walk in, and she hadn't seen me in a couple months. And she's just like, "Ryan, you look like shit." And then a few minutes later, I was like, crap, well, I don't want to drink anymore now. And then I like went into my car and I was like, I'm going to stop. I'm going to slow down, And then towards like 24 hours later, I was like having seizures and I had to go to the hospital.
Oh my
And
God.
so that was like the beginning of that relationship. And so for the entire relationship, I was trying to quit drinking off and on the whole time. I was trying to control it. And then she was off and on. I would say her alcoholism, she was more functional. She was able to, uh, you know, fight through the hangovers and do all that. She and I would do a little bit of, cocaine here and there. It was mostly my problem in that one, but I tried to hide it for the most part. But the relationship was toxic. Neither of us could ever like get sober at the same time. We both, I had never tried rehab. She did rehab for 2 months and came back, and I was still doing the same thing. So I was a very unsupportive partner in that sense, and I regret that to this day. So one thing led to another. We just one day just called it quits, and I moved to Idaho and got a job for a really big equipment rental company for like construction equipment, like from excavators to skid steers, stuff like that. And I had no interest in that kind of stuff. I just wanted to have a change, do something different out of my comfort zone. Yeah, stability.
Yeah.
Because I thought that my career that I had in Seattle was just gave me too much flexibility, too much freedom. I figured moving back to a place where my mother had moved back to, I have some cousins there, I have some friends I know. And I was like, that's a comfortable place. It's a small town called Lewiston, Idaho, which is right across from Clarkston, which I told you about, which is where I live. And it's right across the bridge from it. And I was like, I can change things up here. I'm going to apply for a good job with good benefits, just like the average person, and just see if that changes things. And that was my mindset. And I started seeing a therapist, started getting on medication, and I got the job at the equipment rental company, and I realized I was becoming a functional drinker. Like I would drink, I would run 5 miles in the morning, but I would have drinks right after that. Like 3 drinks right after that at like 7 a.m. before I go to work. Like that's weird, right?
Yeah, that's pretty wild.
Yeah. And I would go to work and, I wouldn't be operating equipment like that, but like sometimes, I would go to work and I would do okay throughout the day. And then I'd have just maybe 2 or 3 beers at night. And I was like, 6 drinks a day really isn't that horrible. That's a lot for a lot of people. But for me, that was a huge improvement. And I completely stopped cocaine when I left Seattle. And I only did it 2 times since I left Seattle. So 2 times in the last 7-8 years.
Oh, so you were on the up and up.
Yeah. So I was on the up and up for this time. And I was working at this equipment company. I was, a lot of people didn't really accept me on that job because I was kind of a city slicker coming in, trying to act, I wasn't acting cocky or anything. I just didn't maybe take it seriously enough at first. And these are guys that are like hunting and fishing and doing all these things that I had no interest in, no background in.
For sure.
I didn't fit in at the job. So when I went to work, I just started to get a little more like uncomfortable. I had a couple face-to-face yelling battles with one of my supervisors. I had a really bad exchange with my actual manager. And like, I started to hate going to work there after a while, but I still went. And then I still kept going. It was just really, I started to have anxiety. I was prescribed Adderall at the time, and she started prescribing me less Adderall, which I think started to help. But because I had ADHD, I don't take Adderall anymore, not for the last like 3-4 years. But I think that was adding to my anxiety because I always realized like I'd go into work and I'd just be really stressed, and that made me want to start drinking more, even like during the day.
Yeah.
So I would like, start to think, okay, on my lunch break, I'll start drinking. And, and then I go back into work, feel a little buzz. And then by the time it would wear off, by the time I got off work, and then I would drink more. So for about 3-4 years, that was functional. But then for the last couple of years, up until about 2 years, a couple of years ago, that's when I really started falling off again. I had moved to Spokane for a job. I'd gotten a job with Caterpillar over there. I moved over there and thought, maybe another change would be cool. And I have some really good friends from college that live in Spokane. So basically every time I fell off and like screwed something up, I would think, all right, let's make a drastic change. So I actually didn't get fired from my
equipment renting.
I only had one write up the entire, few years I was there. And I was considered a good employee. But I was just like I was in my childhood in high school. I was miserable as hell. And I don't even think I was able to put a mask on. I think I did look pissed at work, but I got my job done.
Yeah.
And, but I was exhausted from it, and I was looking for another change. That's my go-to is run, just like relationships. I'm like, hey, something's not right. Something's not making me comfortable. I'm running.
Yep.
I don't know if you experienced that too.
1000%. Yeah. So, okay. You now move back to Spokane?
Yeah.
Okay. And then what job are you doing there?
I was working at another equipment distributing company.
Got it.
Parts distributor.
And how old are you at this point, roughly?
About 35.
Okay. So this is what, 3 years ago-ish?
Yeah.
2022?
Yeah.
Okay. COVID had already come and gone.
Yeah.
Or in lifting.
Yeah.
So, okay. So now this is definitely where probably the fireworks start to happen.
This is where
things...
the good parts, yeah.
You're coming up on a year of sobriety. Yeah. When is your sobriety date?
September 28th.
Okay, so we're by the time this comes out, you will already have a year.
Yeah, this is kind of my way.
So congratulations on a year.
Thank you. Thank you. It's been a really good year, the best year of my life. I've just finally comfortable in my own skin for the first time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay, take us through 3 years ago, you get this new job.
So this is how it like escalates. So there was all that drinking in my 20s, a lot of cocaine use. It escalates to me moving. I have this job. I'm stable at that job for a while. And then as I start to hate the job more, the more my drinking picks up, then I start to think I need another change. So I move over to Spokane, Washington, which is kind of in the middle of the state, Eastern Washington-ish. And, I have some friends over there, and I was thinking, I'm going to get this other job. So I got this job at Caterpillar. I really didn't like it. And I had been gradually learning how to trade stocks for a couple of years. Also backtracking a little, my little sister, right before I moved, this is kind of another thing that catalyzed my depression. She had overdosed on fentanyl. She had been sober for 6 months. She was only 27 years old. She was my best friend. She and I were just ride or die. And since we were little kids, we'd seen a lot together, seen a lot of abuse, a lot of dysfunctional relationships, a lot of rough parenting. My mother had her issues with alcohol. I love her. She's like my best friend, but she had some issues with alcohol too. And that was tough. But she's sober almost a year and a half right now. So I'm proud of her. She actually got sober with me originally. If I didn't relapse, we'd have like the same length of time.
Wow.
But she stayed sober, which is cool.
Wow.
But,
what's your sister's name?
Her name was Devin. Yeah.
Shout out Devin.
Yeah, shout out to Devin. I know she's watching over me. But she and I were really close. And around that time before I had moved to Spokane, she'd gotten this job working for Steve Aoki, the DJ.
Yeah.
And she was going to be his like stylist or whatever. And this is when she was 6 months sober. That was her dream, to style for celebrities, help them put their wardrobe outfits and all that. So she ended up getting a temporary job filling in for him, which required her going back to LA where she had lived for a while and had problems with painkillers and opiates and fentanyl and stuff. So I was really concerned about her going back. And I get this, she went back, and within a few days I hadn't heard from her, and she had asked me to send her money for like her new apartment or something like that. I didn't know what it was for, but I trusted her. She was, sober for 6 months, and I sent her some money and didn't hear from her for like 3 days. And then this one night I, was getting ready for bed, and I get this call from my cousin, and I look at it and I'm like, I already knew what she was going to say. It was like, I already knew I was going to hear that Devin was dead. I don't know how I had this intuition, but I did. And I pick up the phone and I say, yes, Brianne, what's going on? And she goes, I'm so sorry to tell you this, but Devin passed away. And I'm just like speechless. God. And I stay up all night that night just thinking about it, thinking about how I'm going to tell my mother. So I go over to my mom's place and talk to my stepdad, and I say what happened. He's obviously just broken over it. And he's like, I want you to tell your mom. I think that's only right. And I'm like, okay. So my mother wakes up and she comes out, and I'm just like, I got to talk to you. And I'm like, Devin passed away. Devin's dead. And she's just, the look on my mother's face, to see somebody, not just me losing a sister, but a mother losing their child is a whole different level of like, wants to break you, And just seeing that reaction, she just stared and then just walked away. And I don't think I really was able to talk to her for the next year after that. I think her drinking got out of control. She was reclusive. It was really hard to fathom thinking about it. But
dude, I am so sorry for your loss. I also want to apologize just before. I thought you had said she overdosed.
Yeah.
And then she got sober, and she was sober a year and a half. That's why I was like, shout out to Evan. Yeah. But dude, shout out to Evan. No. I'm sorry about that miscommunication there, dude. I'm so sorry.
Oh, no, it's okay. I wasn't clear about the
yeah, of course.
So she, she had that overdose, and then I'm not sure if she had overdosed before that and survived, but so when she passed away, I was broken up about it. I didn't cry. I just think I'm just still to this day, I have trouble breaking down and crying, which is tough. I don't know why. I feel like I'm a sensitive person in a lot of ways, but I have trouble actually crying and shedding those tears. But so I was trying to process it, and it was really tough. And I just, being around my mother, I had, I'd moved into their mother-in-law temporarily because I was looking for my own place, and just seeing her being so reclusive after looking so reclusive and just so depressed after my sister's death, it was starting to wear on me. And I realized I was getting depressed too, and I couldn't get through to her, try to get her to like process it, go see someone, go talk to someone. I don't know how a parent processes that, and that was tough. But I eventually, was between all that stress at work, decided to move to Spokane. And in that process, I was learning how to trade stocks. That was something my stepdad was teaching me how to do. He told me about this one stock one day, and he said, hey, you should send me a few bucks. I'll invest your money for you. And I have a feeling the stock's going to jump tomorrow. And then, the next day he hands me like $600 profit. And I'm like, this is cool. So I get on E-Trade or something and start looking at things, and I start just buying random crap. and it doesn't work out, and I start losing money. But then I started taking classes to get my money back, and I started in my free time, and it was starting to be like a really happy distraction for me. Like it was starting to keep my mind occupied, so I was less focused on my sister's death, less focused on all the crap I hated at work. So started teaching myself how to trade stocks, and I moved over to Spokane, tried that job with Caterpillar, quit after 2 weeks, and said, you know what, I'm going to trade stocks full time. So I had made my money back, and I started actually generating a profit every day, just day trading and swing trading. And I got pretty good at it to the point where I was able to like pay my own bills doing just that. And I took some of my retirement out and invested some of that so I could make more money. The more money you're using, the more money you can make.
Of course.
On a trade. So I and then I started helping some other people trade as well, and they were kind of paying me for like advice and stuff, which was cool. So it turned into kind of this thing. And then I joined a trading group online. So my full-time job became trading, which included no supervision, nobody to tell me not to drink. And I just started drinking whiskey, straight up Jack Daniels, sometimes Fireball, sadly. It's disgusting stuff. But I would be drinking that while working in the morning. And by the time I was done, the market closes at 1 officially, and after hours closes at 5. And I would sometimes take shots as my reward if I was right on a trade, And next thing you know, I'm drinking 12 to 20 drinks easily per day at that time. And the next thing you know, I just start to get sick. I get, hospitalized a couple of times for withdrawal and all that. And then there's this one really bad night that kind of leads up to about a year and a half ago, where my drinking had got out of control. I was getting to the point where I had a roommate, and after I was hospitalized, they told me that I had like a month to live. And I was like, fuck, no, I don't. I'm just going to stop drinking hard alcohol. That was stupid of me. And I decided to go to wine. Like, I stopped drinking for a couple of weeks, took these benzos that they gave me, like Librium and stuff like that. And one night I just couldn't handle the sobriety. I didn't have the withdrawal symptoms anymore as much, but my mind wouldn't stop racing. So I decided, all right, I'm going to try this wine thing. And I never was a wine guy. And I started buying boxes of like Franzia wine, the crappiest, $13 for a box of wine, which has 34 drinks in it or something like that. 34 drinks. So I would, start to hide it from my roommates at the time because I didn't want them to like see it, or whoever was coming to the house or whatever. Anybody who knew me, knew about my drinking getting out of control. I had family around as well. And I just started to keep this bag of wine under my pillow, so I didn't have to get up and go get it anymore, because my body was like starting to stop functioning. I was so weak. I was losing weight. I wasn't eating. I was puking every morning. But then all I had to do was reach behind me, pull out this bag of wine, and I would hold it up and press the nozzle and just open my mouth and chug the living heck out of it until the anxiety went away. And I would do that on repeat. And then next thing you know, I can't even make it to the store anymore. So I'm ordering delivery. I mean, no shout out to DoorDash, because I feel like that's a crime that you can have alcohol delivered.
Yeah.
No, I don't mean that, but DoorDash is great. But I started having it delivered and handed to me. I don't even remember some of the times showing my ID to the person who dropped it off because I was so out of it. And I started getting it delivered. And next thing you know, I'm hospitalized again because apparently one night I was calling my friends and family and texting them really dark messages. And I've never really had suicidal ideation. I've thought about it like passively suicidal, where like I wouldn't care if I died or drank myself to death.
Of course.
But I started sending the text out, which I don't recall doing, saying, I'm tired of this life. I can't do this anymore. I've not even trading stocks anymore at this point, and just kind of like, I'm giving up, and people took that as kind of a warning. So one of my friends decided to have a wellness check on me from the police. They show up and they're not going to arrest me or anything, but they were concerned about me, and they breathalyzed me just to like test me, and I'm at like a 0.4 or something.
Holy shit.
And they're like, we should take you to the hospital. I'm like, okay. So I go to the hospital. I spend a few days in detox, and they send me out again. They're tired of seeing me at this point, obviously. And, that's kind of how they treat people when they keep coming back in. They're like, screw this guy. This guy's never going to learn. I felt like a bum off the street, just like, trying to get a place to stay for the night. And I felt like crap, and they sent me back, and I went through some withdrawals, took the meds again. And finally, like, I decided, I'm going to drink again. And I went on another 2-week bender, and finally I realized my thoughts were getting dark again. And I was like, I'm going to stop. And I started to notice this infection showing up in my right eye. Like, it was getting red, and I was ignoring it while I was on this last little drinking bender. And I basically ignored it. I thought it was just like a really bad, like red eye or pink eye or something, something that would go away with some eye drops or some time, and it started to just kind of turn purple. I'm like, shit, maybe this has to do with drinking. I was like, tonight, this is my last drink. I'm never drinking again after this, ever. I'm like, I'm done with this. I'm starting to my body's starting to shut down. My eye is turning purple. And I'm like, what the hell? And I can't even see out of it. It started to get blurry. And finally, I'm like, I'm going to start my running again. I'm going to start my routine. I'm going to start it now. So stupidly at like 3:30 or 4 a.m., in the, I would say, late winter, so it's still kind of cold, still pretty, obviously dark out. I go on this jog in my usual route, and I go on this jog in the middle of the night. I don't bring my flashlight because I'm still buzzed, and I'm just like have this weird motivation going while I'm buzzed, and I'm like, all right, I'm going on this run. I'm about halfway through my run, and one of the parts of the run requires me to go down these stairs. This big flight of concrete stairs that I like to run up, and then I run back down them. And the first moment I basically take a step, I collapse, fall all the way down these concrete stairs. And all of a sudden I just get up all disoriented. I'm just kind of like I see some blood on my hand. I'm like, oh crap, it's maybe just a cut. So I end up just running back home, and I go lay in bed. I don't even look in the mirror yet because I think I just have a bloody lip. And next thing you know, I'm just starting to see more blood run down my shirt. And it was a white shirt. And it was just like, oh shit, maybe this is big. And I go look in the mirror, and this lip is hanging down. So I have stitches right here. I have stitches up inside this lip. I have both of my front teeth are knocked out. My eye is black. This eye is even worse. It's like completely purple right here. I'll have to give you pictures of it for the for the show, because I looked horrible. My face was just unrecognizable, beat up, just like scabbed, like blood everywhere, unrecognizable to the point where it was bad. So finally, roommate called the cops and had an ambulance come, and they took me, and they basically had me airlifted by helicopter. The injuries were that bad, yeah. To another hospital.
And you were just going to go to sleep.
Yeah, I was just going to go to sleep. And they had me airlifted by helicopter. I'd never been on a helicopter before, and they had me airlifted because I just thought, I was just okay to crash out. It's a good thing I got up and looked in the mirror and saw myself, because I didn't even recognize myself. I end up in the hospital, and they're stitching me up, and they're asking about my drinking, my alcoholism, and all that. And I'm trying to be in denial at the time. I'm like, oh, I was in the hospital, I was cutting back, but yeah. And they test my BAC, and it's still in the 0.3s, and I don't even realize it. And that's what I was trying to do a jog on, which is sadly. And so I got that free helicopter ride. It was about a nice $50,000 ride, apparently, just for like 10 minutes. And I wake up, and I'm in the hospital, and the only person I allow to come see me is my mother, to come visit from Lewiston.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sitting in my bed, and I can see outside the door, and I see her like come in and look at me and casually, and then walk out and like walk away. She comes in a minute later with a nurse, and she's like, holy crap, I walked in here and I didn't recognize you. And I walked out thinking you were in a different room because I didn't recognize that man in there. And I was like, Jesus, my face. And I look in the mirror again, and my face is just purple. And I look like I'm like a different skin tone, honestly. Like I must have hit my head directly on the concrete hard, and just hit my forehead, everything. They said I suffered from a concussion, not to mention all the facial injuries, cracked ribs, bruises everywhere. It was just horrible. I spent about 8 days in that hospital getting help from people, and nurses taking care of me. I actually started to enjoy the stay, and the fact that I was eating food again and stuff. And I was worried that I would never look the same again. I didn't want to look deformed or anything. I was worried my eye was, I had an eye doctor come in to the hospital and said that we're going to have to talk about eye removal. Actual eye removal. I'm like, I'm gonna lose my eye. I still like playing basketball. I like to have both of my eyeballs, but it looked so bad. It looked so purple, so gross. I'll have to show you a picture.
What was it with the eye? Was it your organs were shutting down from drinking?
They said it was a corneal infection that just happened because I was overwearing my contacts, which I just never took them out when I was on benders, apparently.
Okay.
And they said that could be a reason, or it could just be a 1 in a million chance I just got an infection just because I had bad luck. But they said ways to avoid those things are cleaning your contacts,
Got it.
not, wearing goggles when you're in dusty places,
Got it.
being smart, and when I'm drinking, I can say I didn't take care of myself and I
Mm.
wasn't tending to it. So up until this day, I'm taking it, I can see out of it a little bit, very, I'd say about half my vision in it. I can see like colors and like outlines of a body, but I can't see details very well. But to this day, I'm still taking a ton of eye drop medications every day, 3 times a day,
Yeah.
in order to maintain it healing. And the doctor that I see every month says it's gradually healing. And he says, at this rate, he's very confident that I'll have most, if not all, the vision back in it at some point.
Good.
It might take a couple of years, but he says there's scar tissue on my pupil as we speak, and it's moving kind of like a crack in a windshield.
So, okay, you get out of the hospital, you don't drink, but then you drink again after you leave the hospital. And when you drank again, it was roughly about a year ago.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you take us through that?
So what happened was I got out of the hospital and I stopped drinking for 3 months. I started going to meetings.
Okay.
Started developing relationships in there because I was determined to quit drinking. But I wasn't putting in the mental work.
Mm-hmm.
I was just saying I was going to meetings and I was quitting drinking. Those are the two things I thought would save my life. And I basically started making relationships, making friendships. And I heard this thing about 90 and 90 days, that's a big deal. If you can make it 90 days, you kind of have it figured out. So I took that way too literally in a bad sense where I was like starting to get more anxiety as I got towards the 90 days, starting to get a little more itchy to drink. And once I hit 90, I was like, you know what, I'm going to try having a couple of drinks, and see if I can control it for once, and there was no point in that. I couldn't control it at all. I went from that first drink to 15 to 20 drinks a day right off the bat. And I just isolated myself for a whole month and a half. Didn't even leave my bedroom, ordered delivery alcohol. I would call it the worst bender I've ever had, and it was all wine. Worst bender, hands down, that I've ever had. And it happened to be after being 3 months sober, which was the longest bout of sobriety I've ever had.
Mm-hmm.
And I was isolated the whole time. I hardly answered calls, screwed up the relationship with my dad again, made a lot of friends upset because I just kind of disappeared off the face of the earth and went MIA. And I didn't, one morning I wake up and I'm having legitimate seizures, trying to like put my contacts in, trying to brush my teeth. Couldn't text anybody. Like it was that bad. And I kept drinking and it was hard to hold the bottle up to my mouth, like and chug. And that was even tough, but I kept getting enough alcohol down to the point where I should stop shaking by now, but I wasn't. So finally I was able to muster up a text to ask for a ride to the hospital because I'm like, I'm really freaking out here, and end up in the hospital for another week, alcohol detox, seizures, same routine I'd been through before. And then this kind of like spiritual moment kind of happens where this elderly lady walks in and she introduces herself as this nun. And it's this nun that I remember from when I was in grade school. When I was in a private school in Lewiston, those 2 years that I lived in Lewiston, when I was a kid. And she said she recognized my name on the list. And she's usually the person that goes and like signs, like says closing prayers when people are passing away.
Ooh.
Yeah. So she walked in my room and said she
She
saw my name. She saw my name on the list and recognized it from 30 years ago.
Whoa.
Which I found really interesting because she knew me from that school, and apparently I left an impression, which I thought I was just this quiet kid.
Yeah.
But I left this impression on her, and she came into the room just to visit me specifically. And she came in every day I was in the hospital. And while I was in that hospital, I had talked to her about, you know what, I got to really change my life here. I told myself I'd never go to rehab, but I think that's my only option at this point because I have nowhere else to go. During that bender, I'd moved back in with my parents, and I felt really bad about that. I just, not because I, couldn't afford to live elsewhere, is because I was so scared of being alone at that point, like just being in this dark place.
Yeah.
And I finally decided, you know what, rehab won't be so bad. I'll do, 45 days or 2 months or something. And I willingly went, and rehab changed my life. It was Yeah, it was incredible.
So you go away to rehab for 2 months.
Yeah.
And you were what, a week sober before you went in there? You just detoxed in the hospital?
Yeah.
Okay. So you go to rehab. After rehab,
I am guilty for sneaking a couple of drinks in between detox and rehab. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, hey, look, you're sober now. You're sober today. That's what we do.
Yeah.
Okay. So you go away to rehab.
Yep.
You go away for 2 months. You get out. I think one of the most important things that I really want to touch on is when people are in a controlled environment.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's easy to stay sober, but it's easier to stay sober in a controlled environment such as rehab, because you have that accountability around you. But then when you're in the real world, it's a completely different game. It's a different ball game. A lot of people relapse.
Yeah.
What did you do when you got out of treatment to stay sober?
I told myself I was going to start setting boundaries with certain friends that, I obviously stopped the obvious things like stopped going to bars and stopped that, broke off some acquaintances. But I told myself I was going to surround myself with people in recovery, people who can relate, because if I spent 45 days in that place with people going through the same problems and that helped me and I was able to address a lot of things that were tough. I mean, the first thing my counselor asked me was write a goodbye letter to your sister, to my sister who passed. And that was one of the first things I had to do. And that was tough. And I had to read it in front of people. And, there's a lot of difficult things I learned in rehab. So I wanted to take a lot of those tools out of rehab and start to realize I want to be honest about everything. And I feel like one of my biggest problems in my life up until I got sober was honesty. I felt like I had to cover up for a lot of stories, whether it be in relationships and friendships or with my dad, my family, my mom. I just felt like I was always hiding something or I was always living a lie in a lot of ways. So I told myself, I'm going to be honest about everything. And that's something that I've been honest to a fault in a lot of ways. Like it's one of those tools that's so important because if I'm honest with myself, I can be honest with others and I will attract honest people, I think. And that's been a really good thing since I got out because I built these relationships with people in recovery. A lot of them directly in person in my neighborhood community, in my meeting, a lot of them online who I talk to on the phone on a regular basis, so I'm keeping my people that surround me as positive people that don't have to be in recovery, but are like-minded and want to grow in life and are motivated and like want the best and trying to kind of filter out, a lot of the people that are bringing negativity. And that doesn't mean cutting some of them off completely, but it means maintaining a healthy distance and still allowing myself to focus on myself and my sobriety because we can be a little selfish in sobriety. And I would say that it comes before a lot of things. And there's a lot of things that I intentionally don't do these days that I, just because I don't want it to be a trigger. So I don't, so I haven't fully experienced everything sober yet. Like going on an airplane here, that was, I was anxious before getting on the flight, because I usually be drinking before I even went through security. And then I'd be drinking in the airport and then I would drink on the plane and then I would be looking for alcohol after. So doing it sober was kind of like, okay, I'm traveling over to Florida, across the country, doing this podcast and with Kevin Lanning. I'm like, I gotta stay strong, but I didn't really have to tell myself that as much as I had to because I feel like in the last year I've grown so much and not so much more comfortable in my own skin and my anxiety, is a lot less than it used to be. I feel like the more I've talked to people in recovery, the more I've helped people, the more I feel like I can be sober forever.
Yeah.
And I hate to tell myself that I have to be sober forever, but because I like to take it 124 at a time, but it's just helped me not put pressure on myself anymore and realize there's people that have 60 years, there's people that have 6 hours of sobriety, but as long as they're like-minded and want to grow as people and become better people, because I don't think I was the best person for a long time, even though I got along with people, I had friends, I think people liked me. I still don't feel like in my head I was a good person because I don't feel like I was living the truth with everyone.
Yeah.
And that's something I wanted to bring out of treatment was face my demons, face the things that were breaking me down, face the things that were depressing me and like process them finally, because I numbed myself for, 17 years nonstop of all these things I was deprived of. I was sexually assaulted as a child. I never addressed that ever. I I never looked at that before until I was in treatment. I hadn't really grasped the fact that my sister was passed. I mean, I caught myself still texting her sometimes, even on on her birthday, happy birthday, and that was just like a thing where I don't think I had accepted it yet. Because she and I, even if we didn't talk every day, we were always so close anyways. It's like no time would pass. And I just always felt so connected to with her. So like I told myself after rehab in my sobriety that I was going to address things. I was going to face things head on without the use of alcohol and overcome them and be the best person I can be the most honest person I can be, and, live a life that's not full of lies and BS. It's just, I wanted that.
So I think one of the most important things you said was learning how to become honest. Yeah. And it's like not even learning how to become honest with others, but being honest with yourself.
Yeah.
What have you learned about yourself? You went into it a little bit.
Yeah.
About being honest with yourself and others.
Yeah. What have I learned about myself?
Yeah. What have you learned about yourself? Like, for example, I used to lie because I was scared about someone finding out about a certain thing, or because I feel like they would judge my past, they would judge me. For me, it was insecurity. That's why I lied. I wanted to build this facade to you so that you would like me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I learned that, I think I had a lot of insecurities. Like, even if I had no trouble having friends or girlfriends or this or that, I just always questioned how much of that was due to my personality with alcohol and how much of that was due to actually being a cool person that people liked. So that was something I was worried about going into sobriety was if I actually was going to be a likable person. I thought I was going to be boring and go back to who I was as a child, like this, in high school and stuff, where I was like really depressed and not very like expressive and not very interesting to be around, That's what I thought of myself, at least. And I just thought, I was worried I was going to go back to that and I wouldn't have my fun drunk self, which, if I look back at the last, few years of drinking, I was not fun when I was drinking. I was completely, wasn't even functioning. I was in bed all the time. But the thing I was like learning about myself in sobriety was that I actually am capable of loving myself. I actually am capable of setting goals and attaining them and reaching them. And sometimes when I actually say something that I'm going to do, I actually do it now. I used to feel like I was so unreliable because I was so insecure about saying no to people that I would say yes to everything in the past. Be like, yeah, sure, I'll do that. Sure, I'll be there. And then I would just flake like it was no big deal.
Yep.
And that is a big deal. And now I think about, I take every little thing seriously, like whether it's on my schedule or whether it's somebody calls me to ask, for a ride somewhere, or I need help lifting some furniture, or I need somebody to talk to because I'm on the edge of drinking, I like to be there for people. And I realized I am one of the most reliable people I know when it comes to being there for people. And I started to, really appreciate that about myself. And the more I started to appreciate some of my good qualities, the more comfortable I got in my own skin. And the more comfortable I was getting in my own skin, the more outgoing I was getting, talking about my own recovery, talking about my problems with people, relating to people. I just had a great conversation with somebody I interviewed who was sexually assaulted sexually abused at the same age I was. And he and I just really meshed on that. And it gave me more incentive to like talk about it more, which talking about that more was helping me process it more and actually understand it more and not let it fight me. Cause I think that instance as a child, affected me, sexually a lot throughout my life, and affected how I view the romantic side of sex. And so things like that I started to learn in sobriety, where these are what made me who I was. These are what caused a lot of the pain that I was in, but I didn't know why I was in the pain at the time. But now I'm starting to I'm clear headed and I'm starting to see what shaped me into who I was, good things and bad, whether it be the complicated households I lived in, the divorces, the bickering with my father, who we have a great relationship now. And he's really proud of me of where I've come, but I'm learning that I am capable of having really good, authentic, healthy, honest relationships with real good people. And I feel like now that I am living a healthy lifestyle and taking care of myself, not just physically going to the gym, but mentally, like staying consistent with all the things that are good for me and that are working. Because I know if I quit doing what I'm doing, that's where I would start to rest on my laurels and fall off. And I'm not saying just, live by the big book and go to meetings, because it's different for everyone. Some days meetings don't help me, I don't feel like they benefit me, but maybe they do. But sticking to what works, even if you're not seeing the progress right away, it really is starting to like show. And like when I look back, I turn around and look back at myself a month ago and I'm like, holy crap, I've actually come a long way.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't think, a year ago I was capable of anything I'm doing now, the whole doing a podcast and stuff, about a lot of it being about recovery and stuff. I had no idea I'd be doing anything like that now. So I'm just learning I'm so much more of a people person and so interested in other people's stories now. And I feel like I could talk to anybody in recovery now, and like somehow I could relate to them in some way, shape, or form. Yeah. And if I can't, I just love learning. And I realized since rehab that I love learning now. I'm studying all the time, trying to figure out how can I do this better? How can I set this attainable goal and actually reach it and make sure it's actually a reachable goal? And I'm not gonna. And when things don't work, I realized I'm not that disappointed in failure. Like I used to beat the living hell out of myself if something didn't go my way. And I realized I can handle bad situations. And without reacting to it. And I don't need a drink anymore to solve that problem. And I don't freak out. I feel like I don't have anger problems like I used to have sober. Yeah. And I don't know how much of that has to do with just being sober, and how much of my anger problems were due to alcohol, because I think I had anger problems before alcohol. So I just realized I'm actually a much more, at ease, person as far as like how I respond to things.
So you mentioned your podcast. Do you want to plug your podcast?
Yeah. I shout out to Rock Bottom with Ryan podcast. It's on Spotify, YouTube, Apple, Amazon, all of the above, but it's about recovery. And a lot of it's about to do with the rock bottom moments that people have had when it comes to what their moment was when they hit rock bottom and decided to get sober. They describe that in very vivid detail, kind of what led up to it and what led to the rock bottom and how they're doing now and how they're going about their sobriety. So a lot of the episodes have to do with that. And we bring on some guests to talk about specific topics, and I mix it up with a co-host once a week as well. So if you're ever interested, try to listen or be on the show.
Those are the moments that define us in life. Yeah. And once we know it's possible, we achieve it. Yeah. Then we start to repeat that, and we can do it again with the consistent work. Like you talked about, keeping up with that consistent work in recovery. What has worked for us? What hasn't worked for us? And if we fail, of course, gaining some kind of insight as to why we failed, taking those learnings and getting better from there. So, Ryan, I want to thank you for flying across the country for the first time sober on a plane. Yeah. Congratulations on a year, and
thank you so much.
Keep fighting the good fight, shoulder to shoulder. We're here together.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. This was great. It was worth flying across the country to be right here on the show. So I really admire what you do. So,
thanks, brother.
Yeah.